Big Shot Pro is the daddy of all craft presses. Not so handy and portable as most, but large, strong and capable of every range of pressure, through delicate relief and all intaglio methods to deep embossing. There's a 32cm or 12.5-inch width and a generous, but fixed of course, 28mm roller gap. The top roller also has a machine textured surface to help prevent slippage. Like all these presses, sold principally for crafting work, it comes with a set of short plates and beds. These are too short to be of much use to me, so I make up print beds of various lengths from suitably rigid boards of MDF, surface chipboard, etc. I usually make my lino prints using marmoleum, mounted onto 6mm MDF. I make a tight fitting surrounding chase from more 6mm MDF. I like the Turns Burton pins and tabs registration system, particularly on these small presses that can grip and move unfixed sheets of dry paper. The MDF is covered with a white clean vinyl tape and a flip over paper mask made to keep non-printing areas clean. Note also that the small piece of paper placed under the block in a specific area of the image as make ready, i.e. extra packing for one area I thought was printing a little light on the very first proofs. So then, with a piece of the same thickness paper I intend to print on, plus my preferred soft packing or blanket, in this case it's smooth coated felt tabletop protector, felt side down, I have the basics of my sandwich: baseboard, 6mm MDF, lino, paper and packing. Note too that with mounted lino and a tight fitted chase, or even unmounted lino and just side supports, the only raised element is the lino surface to be inked. This stops the rollers bumping into a sudden edge and shifting paper and block as it goes through the rollers. As this press has no pressure adjustment, print pressure can only be controlled by often very small adjustments of the sandwich thickness. It is important to understand too that as a rule all hard sandwich ingredients should go under the lino and soft packing and paper on top. Some people like a firm packing like card on top of the paper. I generally print on 300 GSM satin finish Somerset paper, and I like the combination of thinnish ink layers from the micro textured surfaces and fine carving detail of the lino, plus the very slight embossed quality one thin blanket layer gives me. If I want solid, thick, flat layers of colour, I'll use screen print. My next step is always then to run the sandwich through the press using a scrap piece of the exact same paper but with no ink. I'm looking for two things. One, that I can feel just a slight resistance as the sandwich is gripped and feeds itself through the press, and two, the surface of the paper has a slight but even deboss mark from the uninked block. These factors are fairly subjective, however, and each and every block, inking and paper combination may well require subtly different pressure adjustments. Personally, as my marmoleum is quite thin, I usually tweak these pressures by the addition of sheets of paper underneath the mounted lino. The next stage is to decide on inking methodology. For me, this is just as crucial to the press setup operation as the pressure. I'm often shocked when I see people attempting to get consistent, high-quality prints by just dipping a hard, cheap plastic roller at random into a big dollop of ink and then rolling it out as thick as treacle and attempting to control inking amount on the block itself. It seems obvious, but the amount of ink on the slab will directly affect the amount of ink on the roller, which will in turn directly affect the appearance of the print. Unless you are using thick layers of completely opaque ink, and even then finer details and edges of areas will quickly smear and fill in if there is too much ink. Any variation in the amount of ink applied to the roller and thence to the block will change the tone of the print. So I will almost always require a good quality softish roller, 25 to 30 Shore, which will apply the ink more evenly and with less effort. I will decide on the amount of ink I want on the slab for each inking, and therefore, as I said, how much I want to put down on each print by practice proofs, which must be on some of the actual paper I'll be using for the edition, and by looking and feeling and listening to the very slight hiss of the roller. I will then, using a knife, add only the amount of ink required from my main ink pile to the slab. This will be every other print or sometimes each one. I will then apply the ink in the same way each time and check every print against the first perfect one to see I am not inadvertently gradually increasing or decreasing the ink amount. So thanks for watching and listening. I hope you found it useful. This is how the print turned out after the addition of some transparent screen printed layers too. Father and Son, edition of 10. See more of my work at colinblanchard.com.